The history of union reform, what worked and what didn't unions, have been a cornerstone of worker advocacy for over a century. But like any institution, they've faced their share of challenges, and not all have been overcome. Today, we're taking a closer look at the history of union reform, from the victories that strengthened worker rights to the failures that left progress stalled. We'll uncover what worked, what didn't, and what these lessons mean for the future of labor. Part 1. The early days of union reform. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a time of rapid industrial growth and worker exploitation. It was also the era of the first major union reforms, WINS, the establishment of the 8-hour workday and child labor laws, the rise of collective bargaining agreements, giving workers a voice at the table, union growth during the New Deal, when the Wagner Act of 1935 gave workers the right to organize without employer interference, challenges, violent clashes, like the Homestead Strike and the Ludlow Massacre, exposed the lengths employers would go to suppress unions. Early unions often excluded women and people of color, limiting their reach and effectiveness. Part 2. Post-war reforms and challenges. The mid-20th century was a golden age for unions, but it wasn't without its struggles. WINS, the rise of industrial unions like the United Auto Workers, UAW, which secured better wages and benefits for millions of workers. The Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, while controversial, introduced checks and balances on union power, including restrictions on secondary strikes. Challenges: growing corruption within some unions, exemplified by scandals like those involving the Teamsters under Jimmy Hoffa. Public perception shifted as union leadership became associated with self-interest rather than worker advocacy. Part 3. Modern attempts at union reform. More recently, unions have faced a new set of challenges: declining membership, globalization, and changing labor markets. Successes: efforts to diversify union membership, including organizing gig workers and freelancers. The push for greater transparency in union finances, like the requirements established by the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act of 1959. Failures: many unions resisted modernization, failing to adapt to the needs of younger and more diverse workforces. Weak enforcement of labor laws has allowed corrupt practices to persist in some unions, eroding trust. Part 4. Lessons learned. What can we take away from this history? Adaptability is key. Unions must evolve with the times, embracing technology, inclusivity, and new industries. Transparency builds trust. Reforms that mandate financial and operational transparency are essential for maintaining worker confidence. Accountability matters. Corruption and self-serving leadership undermine unions' missions. Stronger oversight and consequences are non-negotiable. Part 5. The Path Forward. The history of union reform shows that progress is possible, but only with courage and commitment. Proposals for modern reform: independent oversight to prevent corruption and ensure compliance. Whistleblower protections to empower workers to report misconduct. Support for alternative models like worker cooperatives and freelancers associations to complement traditional unions. In conclusion, unions have come a long way, but the journey is far from over. By learning from the past, we can build a future where worker representation is stronger, fairer, and more effective than ever before. The lessons are clear. Now, it's up to us to act on them. Together, we can ensure the labor movement continues to be a force for good, for generations to come.